Verbs in the passive voice allow the action to happen to the subject instead of having the subject do the verb. So in the sentence, the boy had been taught by the teacher, the subject, the boy, is receiving the teaching. Often, but not always, our sentence will have an agent, here, by the teacher. The passive voice for perfect system tenses, that is, the perfect, pluperfect, and future perfect, are very similar in their formation. This video will cover the passive voice for the pluperfect tense. Before we start, we have to talk about principal parts of verbs. So normal transitive verbs, that is, verbs that typically take a direct object, like to teach, dokeo, have four principal parts. Here they are: dokeo, dokere, dokui, doktos. Sometimes the fourth principal part will be doktum, where the ending is a um instead of a us. It all depends on the style of teaching and the text. I will use the us ending for the fourth part for this video. The first principal part, dokeo, is the first person singular of the present tense, so I teach. The second part, dokere, is the present active infinitive, to teach. The third, dokui, is the first person singular of the perfect tense, so I taught or I have taught. And the fourth one, doktos, is the perfect passive participle, having been taught. Or if you're using the form, it's the accusative supine, but no matter about that one. The neat thing about principal parts is that the first two parts, dokeo and dokere, are used with present system tenses. So we use these two to form all of the forms of the present, imperfect, and future tenses. The last two are key for perfect system tenses. That is, the perfect, pluperfect, and future perfect. The third principal part, dokui, is used for all perfect active forms, while the fourth one, doktos, is used for all perfect passive forms. That's it. A simple division in a word's parts, and you can, in fact you probably should, think of the third part as the perfect active part and the fourth part as the perfect passive. So we're going to investigate how to form the passive voice of the pluperfect tense, which itself is very similar to the perfect passive. The first thing we do is take the fourth part, so doktos, and we turn it into an adjective, doktos aum. We're going to use doktos when the subject is masculine, dokta when feminine, and doktum when neuter. This will be the singular form, and in the plural, we need to use the plural forms of doktos aum. So, since it's a first and second declension adjective, we turn doktos into dokti, dokta into doktai, and doktum into dokta, here represented as dokti I a. So we have singular and plural. Now we need to differentiate between first, second, and third persons. The simplest way to do that is to take our handy linking verb sum and use that. Since the pluperfect is really the completed past, we will use the past tense of sum, the imperfect actually more specifically. So eram, eras, erat, eramos, eratis, erant. And here is our pluperfect passive verb. Doktos aum eram, doktos aum eras, doktos aum erat. And in the plural, dokti I a eramos, and notice that the participle part changes. Dokti I a eratus, and dokti I a erant. And that's it. And we do these exact same steps for every single verb. The fourth principal part, the perfect passive participle, make it an adjective, then add the imperfect tense of sum. So for amo, amara, amawi, amatus, we have amatus aum eram, etc. And the same for capio, capere, capi, captus. It's captus aum eram. We translate the pluperfect passive with a had been. So doctus eram is I had been taught. Docti eratus is you all had been taught. Notice that the had here represents the pluperfect, while the been shows the passive nature of the word. Remember, too, that the Latin verb in perfect passive tenses will identify the gender of the subject, which we don't typically do in English, especially in the first and second persons. So if I should say, docta eras, you had been taught, an astute Latin scholar would instantly know that I'm talking to a female and not a male, because of the a ending in docta. Likewise, doctae erant has to be they, women, had been taught. If this form, doctae erant, looks familiar to you, it should, because it's so similar to the pluperfect active. Here, let's go back to our principal parts. Dokeo, dokere, dokui, doktos. The pluperfect uses either the third or the fourth principal part. The active uses the third, right? And the passive, the fourth. But to both of these parts, we add eram, eras, erat, etc. to form the tense. So the difference between doku eram and doctus eram is just how the action flows. In the first one, the subject does the action, while in the second one, the subject receives it. But these words are so related to each other, it's as if the Romans planned it out this way. And hey, who knows? Maybe they did.